Have you ever felt a nagging unease, a sense that something is profoundly amiss in modern life? It's like a persistent hum beneath the surface, a feeling that, despite dazzling technological advancements, limitless choices, and promises of ultimate freedom, a constant emptiness lingers, a silent restlessness that refuses to be silenced. You awaken, instinctively reach for your phone, are immediately inundated with notifications, and mindlessly scroll through countless posts, fleeting stories, and ephemeral messages. Yet, deep within, you recognize that none of this truly satisfies the void. The world boasts unprecedented levels of connection, yet we, paradoxically, have never felt so isolated. This isn't a personal failing. This feeling is not some random coincidence. It is a symptom, a sign of a much grander phenomenon, one that subtly and powerfully shapes our existence without our conscious awareness. The renowned sociologist Zygmunt Bauman aptly described this era as a time defined by gnawing uncertainties, fragile connections, and increasingly disposable relationships. A world where everything shifts at breakneck speed and nothing retains its solidity. Unlike the epochs of the past, where individuals could anchor themselves to fixed structures, robust communities, lifelong career paths, and values that provided unwavering continuity, today, everything feels as though it is slipping through our fingers like grains of sand. Everything is transient, everything is replaceable, and this pervasive liquidity permeates not only our relationships and our professional lives, but also fundamentally alters the very way we perceive ourselves. Have you noticed the ubiquitous pressure to constantly market ourselves? On Instagram, on LinkedIn, even in casual, everyday conversations, we are relentlessly driven to prove our inherent worth. We feel compelled to showcase our interesting qualities, demonstrate our successes, and curate a life worthy of observation and envy. Yet, the moment we cease our performance, when the screens fade to black and a profound silence descends, that uncomfortable feeling resurfaces with renewed intensity. Who are we when no one is watching? The disconcerting truth is that modern society actively discourages such introspective pauses. It thrives on our perpetual distraction, demanding our constant consumption, relentless production, and endless scrolling, effectively preventing us from ever questioning what truly matters. But what if you dared to pause? What if, even for a fleeting moment, you allowed yourself to truly see the disconcerting truth behind this pervasive emptiness? Liquid society has relentlessly drilled into us the mantra that nothing is permanent. But does this inescapable reality necessarily condemn us to a life of superficiality, anxiety, and the gnawing feeling that something essential is missing? In this exploration, we will delve deeply into the revolutionary ideas of Zygmunt Bauman, unpack the perplexing phenomenon of liquid modernity, and understand why this era has left so many of us feeling profoundly empty and unfulfilled. More importantly, we will equip ourselves with actionable strategies to escape this suffocating sensation of perpetually chasing something that frustratingly remains just out of reach. Perhaps the key lies not in accelerating our pursuit, but in bravely stopping to assess our current trajectory and critically examine where we are headed. To truly comprehend why modern life leaves us feeling so unfulfilled, we must first fully grasp the concept of liquid modernity, as powerfully articulated by Zygmunt Bauman. Picture a world where everything that was once solid, stable, and reliable, the foundations upon which we built our lives, now gradually dissolves, like water effortlessly slipping through our grasping fingers. In bygone eras, life was constructed upon relatively fixed and unyielding foundations. The promise of a job for life, a clearly defined and structured family unit, and immutable values rigorously passed down from one generation to the next. Choices may have been more restricted, but this constraint fostered a powerful sense of security, a reassuring sense of continuity, a belief in something larger than oneself. Today, that fundamental stability has largely vanished from our collective experience. We now inhabit a rapidly evolving era where everything is in a perpetual state of flux. Relationships ignite and extinguish with a simple click or swipe. Entire career paths become obsolete seemingly overnight, and viral trends explode onto the scene only to fade into obscurity before they can even be properly understood. And the most genuinely unsettling aspect of this relentless instability is that we have, in effect, become hostages to its unpredictable whims. Modern society relentlessly promotes the notion that uncertainty equates to freedom, that flexibility is a coveted gift, and that the capacity to seamlessly transition between jobs, cities, partners, and even opinions is irrefutable proof of progress and personal evolution. However, this seemingly liberating freedom comes at a steep and often unacknowledged psychological cost. Debilitating anxiety, persistent insecurity, and a pervasive feeling of being perpetually adrift in a vast, uncaring ocean. Bauman astutely compared modernity to a liquid precisely because nothing retains a defined shape for long. Consider the profound transformation in our understanding of relationships, for example. In the past, marriage was perceived as a solid, enduring structure, meticulously built to withstand the tests of time. Problems would inevitably arise, of course, but couples were generally committed to resolving them within the framework of a partnership designed to last a lifetime. Today, relationships are often viewed as temporary contracts, where even the slightest hint of difficulty can be deemed sufficient grounds for one party to simply and unilaterally walk away. Commitment has become synonymous with stifling imprisonment, while detachment is increasingly hailed as a virtue, a testament to one's independence and self-sufficiency. This creates a self-defeating dynamic where no one dares to truly deepen their connection with another, consciously or subconsciously, aware that everything could irrevocably change at any moment. The same insidious process is occurring with our very identities. Formerly, our identities were molded by the powerful forces of culture, community, and deeply ingrained tradition. Today, we are incessantly bombarded with the insidious idea that we must constantly reinvent ourselves to remain relevant and desirable. Who you are at any given moment is never quite enough. You must strive to be more productive, demonstrably more interesting, and undeniably more desirable. You are expected to continually change, relentlessly improve, and dramatically grow, not necessarily out of a genuine intrinsic desire for personal evolution, but because liquid society, with its relentless demands, dictates that you can never, ever afford to stop. If you are not actively and visibly transforming, you are, by definition, falling hopelessly behind. And the inevitable result of this unrelenting pressure, an increasingly anxious, perpetually lost humanity, yearning for connection, but unable to achieve a true and lasting sense of belonging. If everything is inherently ephemeral, how can we possibly create anything of lasting meaning? If everything is fluid and constantly changing, how can we ever hope to build a life that possesses genuine purpose and direction? Bauman's groundbreaking work reveals that liquid modernity not only dissolves the external structures that once provided stability and security, but it also erodes our own sense of self, leaving us feeling fragmented and incomplete. And if you feel as though you are perpetually running without ever getting anywhere, perhaps it is because you have been subtly trained to never actually arrive at a final destination. If, in the past, our identity was meticulously built upon solid values, unwavering family bonds, a strong sense of community, dedication to a chosen profession, and deeply held ideals, today it is increasingly defined by the fleeting products we consume, our carefully cultivated appearance, our coveted gadgets, our meticulously curated hobbies, and even our opinions, which have become meticulously packaged products designed to be displayed for public consumption and validated by external forces. You are no longer simply an individual. You are, in essence, a personal brand, relentlessly vying for attention in a fiercely competitive marketplace. And if you fail to project a compelling enough image, if your brand fails to resonate, you risk becoming irrelevant, an invisible presence in an oversaturated world. We now inhabit an era where the profound question, "Who am I?" has been largely replaced by the far more superficial and performance-oriented question, "How do I appear to others?" Social media has transformed personal identity into a meticulously crafted public spectacle, where every photograph, every carefully chosen phrase, and every seemingly casual interaction are strategically calculated to project an idealized version of ourselves, a persona designed to garner approval and admiration. If you experience something profoundly positive but fail to document and post it, did it truly happen? If you witness a significant moment but fail to garner sufficient likes and positive reactions, did it actually hold any real value? These are the perplexing modern dilemmas thrust upon us by the pervasive influence of liquid society. Bauman identified this unsettling phenomenon as the ultimate triumph of unbridled consumerism over the fundamental human need for genuine belonging. In the past, our sense of identity was deeply rooted in tangible communities and unwavering values that transcended immediate gratification. Today, we are relentlessly encouraged to constantly reinvent ourselves through acts of conspicuous consumption. We purchase clothing not merely to clothe our bodies, but to communicate a carefully constructed status. We select our mobile phones not solely for their technical performance, but for the messages they subtly convey about our perceived social standing. Even experiences, extravagant trips, exclusive restaurants, coveted events have been transformed into products that we consume and subsequently showcase to project a desirable and enviable image. But here's the fundamental problem. This fragile identity based on consumption is inherently unstable and easily shattered. Just as the newest smartphone model quickly becomes outdated and obsolete, our meticulously crafted self-image also demands constant updating and relentless maintenance. You cannot simply stop. You cannot merely exist as you are. You must perpetually transform into something new, demonstrably more interesting, and undeniably more desirable. And this creates a dangerous psychological trap. The constant gnawing fear of never being quite enough, of perpetually falling short of the ever-shifting expectations. The pervasive emptiness of liquid society stems not from a scarcity of choices, but from the paradox of an overabundance of them. How can you possibly commit to one particular option when the market constantly dangles the tantalizing promise of a better, more advanced version just around the corner? How can you wholeheartedly embrace a particular identity when the alluring promise of something new and exciting is always flashing before your weary eyes? Liquid modernity has subtly conditioned us to perpetually crave more, to never be fully satisfied, because a satisfied consumer is, by definition, a consumer who ceases to buy. And if your very identity is inextricably linked to what you consume, then the last thing this insatiable system desires is for you to ever feel complete, content, or fulfilled. But what happens when we apply this same relentless logic to our relationships, the very bedrock of human connection? If everything is disposable and readily replaceable, how does this fundamentally alter the way we connect with others, the level of investment we are willing to make in fostering genuine bonds? That is the critical question we will explore next. If everything in modern society is inherently fluid, easily disposable, and constantly replaced with the next best thing, it is hardly surprising that this has profoundly impacted the way we relate to others, the depth and durability of our interpersonal connections. In earlier times, relationships were viewed as something to be diligently and patiently built, nurtured with care, and sustained by a mutual willingness to confront inevitable difficulties and grow together through shared experiences. There existed a powerful sense of permanence, a deeply ingrained belief that certain connections were intrinsically worth the sustained effort required to maintain and strengthen them over time. But in this current era of rampant liquid modernity, that foundational mindset has largely vanished, replaced by a more transactional and readily dispensable approach. Today, the prevailing rule seems to be deceptively simple. If something becomes even remotely difficult or inconvenient, simply replace it with something easier and less demanding. Bauman eloquently described this pervasive phenomenon as the insidious fear of permanence, a direct reflection of the consumerist values that have permeated every facet of our lives. Just as we are relentlessly trained to seek out the next novelty, the latest upgrade, the most exciting experience, we are also subtly conditioned to avoid any and all bonds that might require genuine commitment, sustained effort, or emotional vulnerability. Love, friendship, even familial connections have become increasingly superficial, ephemeral, and fragile, easily discarded when faced with the slightest inconvenience. We now exist in a perpetual state of ambivalence, constantly maintaining one foot in and one foot out, perpetually evaluating whether a more desirable option might be lurking just around the corner. In the next fleeting opportunity, the next intriguing match, the next ephemeral connection that promises to make us feel momentarily alive before inevitably fading away. This helps explain why so many relationships today are characterized by a persistent sense of instability and insecurity. Nothing feels truly secure. Even a minor disagreement or misunderstanding can be deemed sufficient grounds to abandon the partnership altogether. The fear of deepening the connection with another human being is palpable and increasingly prevalent, because, according to the prevailing liquid logic, the deeper you dive, the more emotionally vulnerable you inevitably become, and the greater the potential for devastating heartbreak. If everything can be so easily replaced, Why invest significant time and emotional energy in something that may ultimately prove to be fleeting and unsustainable? It's far easier and seemingly less risky to keep everything at a superficial level, light, casual, and devoid of deep emotional investment. The fundamental problem, of course, is that these shallow, fleeting connections never truly fulfill our deepest human needs. They provide momentary distraction, temporarily alleviate loneliness, but ultimately fail to address the underlying emptiness that gnaws at our souls. This pervasive transience is also reflected in the way we approach the very idea of belonging. Long-lasting, deeply rooted communities have largely given way to temporary, loosely affiliated networks, groups formed out of sheer convenience and readily dissolved at the slightest sign of conflict or disagreement. We find ourselves perpetually surrounded by people, yet we rarely experience the profound and grounding sensation of truly belonging anywhere. Genuine belonging demands continuity, sustained effort, and deep, unwavering roots. And liquid society has effectively trained us to be emotional nomads, perpetually ready to pack up and leave at a moment's notice, flitting from one fleeting connection to the next in an endless search for something that remains perpetually out of reach. But this insidious fear of commitment does not merely impact our romantic relationships. It creates a devastating domino effect that spreads throughout every aspect of our lives, transforming even our most trivial decisions into sources of overwhelming anxiety. Career choices, personal projects, fundamental life directions. Everything feels inherently unstable, as if any choice is ultimately a burden, rather than a solid foundation upon which to build a meaningful future. And this, inevitably, leads us to the next crucial point: the chronic anxiety that has become the defining hallmark of our modern era. Liquid modernity has not only conditioned us to avoid commitments and treat everything as readily disposable, it has, in effect, condemned us to a perpetual state of anxiety, uncertainty, and profound loneliness. When nothing is permanent and everything can be effortlessly replaced, we exist under a silent and relentless pressure to constantly adapt, reinvent ourselves, and prove our intrinsic worth. This exhausting and ultimately unsustainable effort generates a pervasive sense of restlessness and unease that never truly dissipates. Think about our increasingly obsessive reliance on external validation. Social media has cleverly trained us to measure our value and self-worth in terms of likes, comments, and shares. Our self-image is no longer constructed internally based on our own values and accomplishments, but is instead relentlessly shaped by the often capricious and superficial reactions of others. If a photograph receives too few likes, if a meticulously crafted story is largely ignored, if a seemingly urgent message goes unanswered for an unreasonable amount of time, we experience an almost irrational sense of unease and self-doubt. But why does this happen? Because in liquid society, being ignored equates to being deemed irrelevant, and being irrelevant is the worst possible fate in a world where everything and everyone is ultimately replaceable. This relentless logic also permeates the way we approach the future. In the past, life followed a relatively predictable trajectory. You were born, grew up within a clearly defined community, followed a somewhat structured path: school, stable work, marriage, family, eventual retirement. Today, that reassuring script has largely vanished, replaced by a dizzying array of seemingly limitless possibilities. The world relentlessly tells us that we can be anything, pursue any path, achieve any goal. But this apparent freedom often paralyzes us, leaving us feeling overwhelmed and directionless. If all options are ostensibly available, how can you possibly make a definitive choice? If, at any given moment, something undeniably better might materialize, how can you wholeheartedly commit to any one particular decision? And then, inevitably, comes loneliness. Liquid society has skillfully sold us the enticing idea that we are more interconnected than ever before, that technology has collapsed the distances between us and fostered a global community. Yet, in practice, we have perhaps never felt so profoundly alone, so disconnected from genuine human connection. We spend countless hours interacting digitally, forging fleeting connections with people we may never actually meet. But when the screens are finally turned off, when the digital world fades away, what remains? Often a deafening silence, a stark reminder of our isolation. Superficial ties and fleeting online interactions cannot possibly fulfill the fundamental human need for deep, meaningful connection. We may accumulate hundreds, even thousands of online contacts, but possess few, if any, true friends. We may engage in countless casual encounters, but struggle to cultivate meaningful, lasting relationships. And this leaves us with the deeply painful feeling that, despite being constantly surrounded by people, we are essentially alone, adrift in a sea of superficiality. And what is society's prevailing response to this widespread anguish? More consumption, more distraction, more readily available stimuli designed to prevent us from stopping, reflecting, and confronting this underlying emptiness head-on. But is there a viable way out of this seemingly inescapable cycle? How can we resist the seductive allure of liquid logic and discover something solid and enduring amidst the chaos? This is precisely what we will explore in the next crucial section. If liquid society actively encourages us to avoid commitments, to base our identities on fleeting acts of consumption, and to exist in a perpetual state of anxiety and loneliness, the paramount question becomes, how do we effectively escape this self-destructive cycle? How do we cultivate genuine meaning and purpose in a world that relentlessly urges us to never stop, to never delve deeper, to never establish meaningful roots? The answer, unfortunately, is far from simple, because resisting liquid modernity inherently means swimming against the prevailing tide, defying deeply ingrained societal norms. It means relinquishing the deceptive comfort of superficiality and facing the daunting challenge of building something solid and enduring when everything around us subtly encourages us to remain on the surface. The first essential step is recognizing and acknowledging the problem. Much of our dissatisfaction stems from the fact that we remain largely unaware of the insidious structural forces that have trapped us within this destructive cycle. We tend to mistakenly believe that our feelings of anxiety, loneliness, and pervasive emptiness are individual failures, personal shortcomings that we alone are responsible for overcoming. In reality, these debilitating feelings are largely symptoms of a system meticulously designed to keep us precisely in that state, restless, dissatisfied, and perpetually searching for something that frustratingly remains just beyond our grasp. Once we come to fully understand that this pervasive dissatisfaction is not merely a figment of our imaginations, not simply a personal failing, but rather a direct consequence of the specific type of society we inhabit, We can then begin to actively seek out viable alternatives, to consciously choose a different path. One of the most empowering and transformative alternatives is to actively relearn and embrace the enduring value of permanence. In a world where everything is readily disposable, where commitments are viewed with suspicion, the simple act of wholeheartedly committing to something, be it a meaningful relationship, a challenging personal project, or a close-knit community, becomes a powerful act of resistance, a defiant rejection of the prevailing throwaway culture. Stability is not a burden or a form of stifling confinement. Rather, it is the essential foundation upon which we can build something truly meaningful and lasting. Instead of fleeing at the first sign of difficulty or discomfort, we need to consciously relearn how to confront challenges with courage and resilience, with the unwavering awareness that nothing genuinely valuable or enduring is ever built overnight. That lasting success requires sustained effort, unwavering dedication, and the willingness to persevere through inevitable setbacks. Another crucial way to effectively escape this insidious liquid logic is to consciously disconnect from the relentless culture of consumption as a means of defining our identities. This does not necessarily mean completely ceasing to consume, withdrawing entirely from the marketplace. Rather, it means consciously choosing to stop defining who we are based on what we own, what we display, and what we conspicuously consume. It means actively seeking out sources of meaning that transcend external validation, fleeting trends, and the incessant need to constantly reinvent ourselves to remain relevant and desirable in the eyes of others. It means cultivating an internal sense of purpose, something deeply personal, meaningful, and unwavering that does not depend on volatile market fluctuations, fleeting social media trends, or the often fickle approval of external forces. And perhaps the most challenging change of all, yet also the most profoundly necessary, is to actively relearn how to be alone without feeling debilitatingly lonely. Liquid society has relentlessly conditioned us to seek constant distraction, to never allow ourselves to experience silence, to always fill our time with external stimuli designed to prevent us from confronting our own inner thoughts and feelings. But profound self-knowledge, genuine connection with others, and the cultivation of deep meaning can only emerge when we learn to embrace stillness, engage in meaningful introspection, and endure the discomfort of simply being alone with ourselves, stripped bare of external distractions. In the end, resisting liquid modernity does not necessitate completely rejecting the world we inhabit, retreating into some sort of isolated existence. Rather, it means finding creative ways to navigate through this complex and often overwhelming world without losing our sense of self, our deeply held values, and our connection to something larger than ourselves. It means building islands of solidity, unwavering bastions of meaning, in a vast and unpredictable ocean of uncertainties. And now that we possess a deeper understanding of the fundamental problem and have explored potential solutions, one crucial question remains. How do we translate this newfound knowledge into concrete action? How do we take the first tangible steps to escape the pervasive emptiness of liquid society and actively build a life imbued with genuine meaning and lasting purpose? This is precisely what we will discuss in the compelling conclusion. If you have journeyed with me this far, You have already come to realize that the underlying emptiness that pervades modern life is not merely an individual problem, a personal failing to be overcome in isolation. It is not your fault. It is not because you are not trying hard enough, not consuming the right products, or not keeping up with the frenetic pace of the ever-accelerating world. This widespread emptiness is a symptom of something much larger, a carefully constructed system meticulously designed to keep us restless, perpetually dissatisfied, and endlessly searching for something that frustratingly remains just beyond our reach. Liquid modernity relentlessly dissolves everything: our closest relationships, our deepest certainties, our very sense of identity. It insidiously teaches us that nothing should last, that everything is inherently replaceable, that constantly being in motion is intrinsically synonymous with freedom and progress. But has this relentless pursuit of freedom not inadvertently become a new and more subtle form of imprisonment? The great and unsettling paradox of liquid society is that by ostensibly freeing us from the old, rigid structures that once confined us, it has, in effect, left us perpetually adrift, without a solid anchor in a vast and unpredictable sea. It promised us that we could be anything we desired, pursue any path that captured our imagination, but it simultaneously fostered so much instability and uncertainty that we now often struggle to even discern who we truly are. It told us we could have any type of relationship imaginable, without limitations or constraints, but it simultaneously left us paralyzed by a pervasive fear of genuine commitment, a crippling anxiety about investing too deeply in a connection that might ultimately prove to be fleeting. It offered us an infinite ocean of possibilities, an overwhelming array of choices, but it simultaneously eroded the very ground from beneath our feet, leaving us feeling perpetually insecure and directionless. And that is precisely why so many individuals experience this pervasive, silent restlessness, this gnawing sense that something essential is missing, because in truth, it truly is. The paramount question that now confronts us is, what do we do with this hard-won knowledge? Now that you possess a deeper understanding of how liquid modernity subtly and powerfully shapes your life, subtly influencing your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, you effectively have two distinct choices before you. You can passively continue to go with the flow, allowing yourself to be swept along by the relentless current, blindly adapting to every new trend, desperately attempting to fill the gnawing void with fleeting distractions, consuming experiences like disposable products that quickly lose their luster and leave you feeling empty once again. Or you can actively choose to embark on a different path, consciously starting to build something solid, something that possesses depth and meaning, something that transcends the disposable logic of the modern world and offers a genuine sense of fulfillment. This could entail wholeheartedly committing to something you deeply care about, whether it be a meaningful relationship, a challenging personal project, or a deeply held life philosophy. It could involve consciously disconnecting from the incessant need for external validation and instead choosing to live in alignment with your own authentic values, regardless of societal pressures or expectations. It could simply mean learning to stop, to be fully present in each moment, to embrace silence without feeling the need to constantly fill it with external stimuli or distractions. Because what liquid society fears more than anything else is that you become fully aware of what is happening, that you come to realize that you do not have to passively accept this endless cycle of dissatisfaction, that you possess the power to go beneath the surface, to dive deep into something real and enduring. Now, I am genuinely curious to know, do you resonate with this feeling of emptiness? Have you personally noticed how the pervasive influence of liquid modernity has subtly affected your own life? Please share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. Your insights could be invaluable to others on this journey, and if this exploration has resonated with you, please do not stop here. The next step is essential to delve even deeper into this critical discussion, to arm yourself with even more actionable strategies. If you are truly committed to understanding how to effectively escape this insidious cycle and cultivate a life of genuine meaning, please continue watching. I look forward to seeing you there. So, as we reach the end of this exploration, I hope you've gained a clearer understanding of why that persistent feeling of emptiness might be lingering. It's not just you, it's the liquid nature of our modern world, constantly shifting and making it difficult to find solid ground. The key takeaway is that you do have the power to reclaim your sense of self and build a more meaningful life, even amidst the chaos. It's about choosing permanence over disposability, authentic connection over fleeting validation, and developing that internal compass, that deep-rooted purpose, to guide you forward. We've touched on actionable strategies here, and also how important digital wellness, time perception, and conscious living can be. This intersects with so much great neuroscience content on how to reclaim cognitive clarity and cultivate a healthier relationship with technology. It's a journey of self-optimization, really, to tap into emotional intelligence and high-performance habits, and understand where the AI philosophy of self impacts your decision. Ultimately, remember that you're not alone in this journey. Now, I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts. Have you felt this sense of liquid modernity impacting your life? What are some of the challenges you're facing, or perhaps some of the strategies you've found helpful? Please leave a comment below. Let's start a conversation and share our experiences. Ask any questions that might still be on your mind so we can build our knowledge together. And if this resonated with you and you're interested in digging deeper into topics like these, understanding the impact of our modern world on our minds and finding practical mental health tools to navigate it all, please consider subscribing. That way, you won't miss future videos where we'll be exploring more actionable strategies for a more fulfilling and intentional life. See you in the next one.